So it's been a crazy week. Lots of not great news all around. And I've actually recorded a lot of videos that I just haven't uploaded because, I felt like I couldn't really contribute anything. And I was very angry in those videos. And I just decided it was better that probably didn't upload any of that. But one thing really got me thinking today, and it's something that I don't know how much I have to offer in terms of insight, but I really want to hear what everyone else has to say or thinks, because it's something that is, I think, a lot more nuanced and complex than I originally thought, and I'm just kind of interested. So in the Our Path Forward thing put out by Bungie today, they had a quote here. "To us, the path forward is clear. We need to make the final shape an unforgettable Destiny experience. We want to build something that will be regarded alongside the best games we've ever made, a fitting culmination that honors the journey we've been on together for the past 10 years. Forsaken, Witch Queen, and Taken King, these are the standard bearers we aim to live up to." And so I guess it's also really important context that there's been a lot of pretty reliable sources reporting that final shape has been delayed from February all the way to June, so 4 extra months. And we haven't had official confirmation about that from Bungie. They haven't denied it either. But if that's true, they were saying that the main reason for that delay is because internal playtesting says that the final shape as an expansion is good, but not great. And so I guess really the question I have is, can you take a good expansion and make it great with 4 extra months of development time? And I'm going to preface all of this by saying I'm not a game developer. I have no idea how long most of this stuff takes. But that seems like an obscenely short timeline. And the way I've been kind of thinking about it is like, could Bungie take Beyond Light, how it exists now, and in 4 months transform it into something the quality of Witch Queen or Forsaken? That's crazy, right? Like, surely not. And I really want to get everyone's thoughts on one thing, which is, why are those expansions so good? What is it? Because I'm really having trouble narrowing down like a set number of things. It's more just like a general vibe around each expansion, or kind of like the experience itself. It's not like necessarily individual components, but it's kind of like how each of those individual components interact with like the foundation of the expansion and the marketing, and also like the community sentiment at the time. And I mean, that itself raises a question. Everyone is really pissed off right now. So in 6 months, is that enough time for Bungie to turn around community sentiment? Because if they could release the best thing ever tomorrow, and people are gonna hate it because of how angry they are, right? So that's kind of my question for everyone, is like, what could they add to Final Shape to really bolster it? And I think, like, honestly, like, the number one answer is kind of a cop-out for me, but the number one answer I can think of is like, innovation and the unexpected. I think if you look at like Taken King, Forsaken, especially, Witch Queen from a narrative perspective, not necessarily from a gameplay perspective, which is actually where I think it hurt. That's why I think Witch Queen isn't as good as Forsaken. But like Forsaken had a lot of like twists and turns and things we didn't see coming and things we didn't expect and things they didn't market. The entire Dreaming City, really, like, we knew it was there, but we had no idea what was going on. And we all got to discover those mysteries and those extra storylines and those activities and kind of the weekly cycle and the beats, and everything just felt very alive and evolving. But most importantly, it was a complete surprise, and it really played into that kind of fantasy elements of mystery and puzzle solving and secrets and that sort of thing. And for me, that's a very powerful thing that Bungie hasn't really done in a while. Like, we had twists and turns, like I mentioned, in the Witch Queen campaign, but from a gameplay perspective, there wasn't really that much. And I would say for the past 2 years, with the exception of some things seasonally, like occasionally, like secret exotic missions, or like this season, I think there were a lot of like really cool puzzles, smaller but still cool. I feel like they've really like just majorly stepped away from a lot of that stuff, which is really unfortunate. And you know, we do know that a lot of the developers have, the quote is, begged leadership to allow them to do things that they know we want. Everyone's favorite GDC talk, we know that Bungie's leadership really wrangles in the scope of things, and that's almost certainly why we have felt a lot of that. But if they want this expansion to be that much of a banger, they need to start implementing that sort of thing, and I just don't know if they can do that in 4 months, if none of that exists already. Obviously we have no idea. So that's kind of like my first thing. The second thing is, like, you know, the raid is obviously really important. I think, like, for all of its faults, I think Lightfall was actually not that bad of a gameplay experience. Like, Strand is amazing. I really liked a lot of the exotics and a lot of just kind of how gameplay feels. The 3.0s kind of played into that, and there's a lot of quality of life stuff that happened around that time, right? That I think was really, really good. And, you know, innovation is really important on this front too. Like, Witch Queen brought crafting. We had loadouts with Lightfall. This is all really important stuff. But Lightfall's raid was pretty lacking, and the narrative sucked, right? And that kind of blew a hole in it. And so that, I think Lightfall's like a really good example of, you could have a really great gameplay experience, but if every small aspect of the DLC isn't great, then the entire thing gets affected by that, right? You can have a great raid. I think like Beyond Light's like a pretty good example of that. Like, Stasis was pretty cool. It destroyed Crucible, but you know, Stasis is really cool. The raid was fantastic. DSC is one of my favorite ever. I think a lot of the things surrounding Lightfall or Beyond Light were really good, but the narrative was just kind of like, once again, like kind of meh. And but you can't only have a good narrative. You gotta have a good narrative, and you have to have good gameplay elements, and it all just kind of ties together. And it just feels so intangible for me to be able to like point to specific things, you know. So I think it really goes back to that kind of mystery, and really they just have to surprise us. The raid has to be a banger, especially now. I mean, it's gonna be the culmination of everything, pretty much. So it's got to be a banger. 3, like, I know a lot of people are probably gonna be like, oh, they have to add a subclass. Like, they have to, in the next 4 months, they have to completely develop a red subclass and add it. I'm not convinced that would actually make that big of a difference. I think, once again, Lightfall's a great example. Like, Strand is probably some of the best feeling gameplay in the entire game throughout the history of the game, in my opinion, and didn't save it. So I'm not really sure if that's a great place to really focus on that. And 4, I think they really have to focus on not only what they are adding, but really bolstering what exists. And we've been having this conversation for years, but the core playlists need help, and they need revitalization. The thing that we keep seeing in all of these reports and all of these things about the layoffs is Bungie is terrified because their revenue is way down, because player retention is way down. And a campaign does fuck all for player retention. You know what I mean? Like, a couple new strikes, whatever. There are core systems here that really need to be revitalized. And we were supposed to originally, like, next season, season 23, was supposed to be Season of the Health. They decided to push that back until Final Shape. It could be a really interesting thing to kind of play around with in the extra 4 months, I guess, like before Final Shape launches. But I think the reality is like, if they don't bring their all there, then it doesn't matter how good the expansion is, because they're going to miss out on player retention anyways. So I think it's a really, really hard balance to strike between of everything. You know, it's not only the quality of the campaign, but we have to really feel the environment. You know, something as simple as the aesthetic. Like, you have to be able to really relate and enjoy that. And I just think there's so many things they have to make sure they get right in just an extra 4 months to bring something from good to great. Really worries me personally. And I like I said, I don't really have that many answers, and I just want to hear everyone's thoughts on that. For you, what is really the difference between Beyond Light and Witch Queen, for instance, or Beyond Light and Forsaken? Like, what takes a good DLC and what makes it fantastic? It's not 2 extra strikes. I refuse to believe that. You know, it's not a Crucible map. Like, there's something though. There's an essence there, and I really want to get to the bottom of that essence. Is it just mystery? Is it secrets? What is it? Let me know down below. Very interested to hear all your thoughts. Thank you guys, and I'll see you very soon.